And many people want to know about my relationship with Tony Robbins. And I'll tell you, it starts with my origin story. Now, a little bit about me. I'm the founder and CEO, as I mentioned, of All Star Dental Academy. I'm a lawyer, MBA, entrepreneur, author, speaker. And you're like, great. Well, why dentistry? Why is dentistry an area that I focus on? And it's simple. It's my father. And ever since I was a little boy, my father said, don't be a dentist. Because at that point, he was encountering issues with insurance companies and corporate dentistry back then, 20 plus years ago. And he saw that those that were successful were business people. And so he encouraged me to build my skills accordingly. And my goal was to become a Fortune 500 CEO. And I had the great pleasure of writing a book with Brian Tracy, best-selling book on business skills. I shared the stage with Michael Gerber, the author of The E-Myth Revisited. And subsequent to that, I became a top coach for Tony Robbins. But more about that later. And while I'm working with Tony Robbins, my father's business is facing bankruptcy. It's in big trouble. I said, hey, Dad, can I help your business? He had nothing to lose. He said, sure. So I took over his marketing and the administration of his business, and I was able to send a flood of new patients to the dental practice, but they weren't converting. So I thought to myself, we've got to do something different. And at the time, my girlfriend, who's now my wife, Heather, was working for Bloomingdale's, Kate Spade, Theory, and she was a top sales consultant. She was a manager. She was a trainer. And so I took her from retail and I brought her into the dental practice. Now, mind you, she has no experience in dentistry, nor do I. And she comes into the dental practice and there's no systems because she's used to systems working for Fortune 500 companies. And so she ended up taking over all the phones and the customer service. And we took a $1 million struggling practice and brought it to $2.3 million within 18 months. And my father was seeing heads of state, celebrities, affluent patients. And all this came from phone skills, scheduling, bringing ideas outside of dentistry, just from the best in business, and bringing it to dentistry. Back to Tony Robbins. So I'm in Vegas at a conference, staying at the Rio, and I was invited there because I was one of his top coaches. And so we're in this big executive conference room, and Tony comes barging in the room. You know, Tony, big guy and a lot of energy, barges in the room, and he points to one of the consultants that works for him. He says, you, tell me a story. And the consultant starts talking, and I couldn't hear. It's such a big room. And after about 4 or 5 minutes of the consulting talking, you see Tony Robbins, frustrated. And he's yelling at the guy, and he's just like, I don't like that story. That's not congruent. Doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, ooh, wow, that was tough. And then all of a sudden, Tony turns around and points to me. And he says, you, tell me a story. And I go, oh, okay. So I tell him a story about my father. And I told him how I was able to take my father's business from near bankruptcy and double it and improve it within 18 months, as I was telling you. And not just that, I did put some Tonyisms, which were important, but I also talked about how special it was to not just make the difference financially, but to make a difference for family, to make a difference in people's lives. And Tony paused for a moment and he smiled. And he said, Alex, that's a good story. And he shook my hand. And he's got big hands, really. I'm like shaking his pinky. And that moment was very special. That was the genesis or the seed to which All Star Dental Academy, the company that I run, would become. Because I thought to myself, if I can make a difference for my father's practice, if this is something that Tony Robbins enjoyed, the story, the transformation, I could help other people. I can help other practices. And so I look at dental practices, I look at dentists as part of my own family. And since then, since the Tony Robbins and since launching All Star more than a decade ago, we have become business partners and member benefits with the Academy of General Dentistry, the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, the Dawson Academy, and many others. And we are now the leading training and coaching company for service-based phone skills and practice management training. So whether you're a dentist listening or watching, or any entrepreneur, you can see that all these business skills relate to whatever business you're in. And I really wanted to share with you because, again, people, they love this thing about Tony Robbins. And what I love about Tony Robbins is I love how dedicated he is to his business. And not just to his business, but to his vision, what he stands for. It's something greater than himself. Another thing about Tony is all about modeling the best in business. What are they doing? I don't care what industry, I'm going to apply it to me. So always looking what we can learn and what we can improve. I did a whole podcast about how it all applies. Any business, anything you learn, apply to what you do. So thanks for joining me. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, comment, and until next time, go out there and be an all-star.